Dark. Yeah, people are talking.
That's good. Inviting some options.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Em.
Precious opportunities.
I hate to say this, just a second row is
Because the sound.
Yeah, we're on the balcony.
Chris, how's the sound? You're okay?
Yeah, we're not that far up. All right, try again. Yep.
We go again. In our continued Denko A, our study retreat. I wanted to make just a few comments that are kind of bridging comments from the ordinary mind and the that you both the stories. Excuse me. And there are a few things that, once again, I pulled from the things that I've been studying from Sojin Weitzman's teachings. And I just thought that they might be interesting bridges to the next koan from what we've been studying so far. They're just little snippets. Interesting. This first quote will be very resonant with what we've been talking about and all the things that we've been practicing with. Sojin says, instead of shutting down and resisting, we open up and accept whatever appears. And instead of narrowing our borders, we allow them to expand and include whatever appears. This is counterintuitive. It's that opening that we talked about today. So when I was reading it, I thought, oh, that's what we were just describing. That broadening the territory and using these stories to open up a larger space, rather than trying to, a usual way of trying to solve problems, at least in our culture, is you want to narrow it down to get to the solution. You want to find out what the point is, instead of opening it up to a larger possibility, many possibilities. He said later, a few pages later, he said, Suzuki Roshi would encourage us, and this is a very different kind of encouragement. Suzuki Roshi would encourage us by saying that those who had the most difficulty and see it through will have the most benefit. Acceptance means letting go, or freedom from attachment. And this is the bedrock of practice. There's no special state of mind to attach to, and no special feeling to desire, and no special self to hang on to. This can be called bliss. I'm going to start over. So sorry. Suzuki Roshi would encourage us by saying that those who have the most difficulty and see it through will have the most benefit. I know in my practice, and I don't know about any of you, I wonder about you, there are times when I go to session or, at an intensive, and if I was kind of struggling and having difficulty and a lot of all that, then I would really, get a lot. But if I felt really great and went in, it's kind of like I go to sleep. I wouldn't get as much. It's really strange. I thought, well, this would be great. I'll get a lot because I'm not burdened by anything. But it's almost like, I don't know. It was very counterintuitive. And he would say, those who have the most difficulty and see it through will have the most benefit. The son was saying today, when you were referencing another Suzuki Roshi quote, I think, in which there was a gentleman who had come to Sesshin, and he was quite a successful person, very, very accomplished. And so it seemed like his assumption was if he came to a retreat, he would do quite well, because that's what he did. And about the fourth day of a 7-day session, like any of you who've been in the 7-day retreat, it's like, I don't know about this. So we went in to see Suzuki Roshi for Dokusan, and he said, I can't do this. I'm gonna have to leave. And Suzuki said, yeah, we try and we try, and we fail. And then we go deeper. He didn't say, yeah, it is hard, it's okay if you want to go. And he didn't say, you should stay. He just said, yeah, this is what it's like. And so when Sojin says, acceptance means letting go, or freedom from attachment, it's the failing he's talking about isn't the failure we usually think of as not doing right. It's that it didn't work, like it falls through your hands. It means letting go, freedom from attachment to the idea of how the thing would go. And then he said, there's no special state of mind to attach to. Like, really? Isn't that why I'm involved in all this effort? And no special feeling to desire. Easy for you to say. And no special self to hang on to. Well, secretly, you know. And he says this can be called bliss. It reminds me of that story, which I think I've told from Bob Rosenbaum. You know, Bob. And if you read his book on the Surangama Sutra, he tells a story in there where he went to see Sojin. Well, at the end of a 7-day session. And it was the first one he'd ever gone to at Berkeley Zen Center. And he was a neuropsychologist, obviously a great guy. Neuropsychologist, he's a longtime meditation practitioner, yoga teacher, Qigong, he's written books on Qigong, all this stuff. So he thought, great, I'll sign up and it'll be a pleasant week of meditation. And it's a Zen session. And so from the very first day, it was really difficult for him. And he was struggling, he couldn't get comfortable, he was crying, he saw, you know, it really impacted him. Like it has for many of us in these long silent sessions. On the last day of such a retreat, there's a shosan ceremony in which everyone in the whole retreat comes up and meets the teacher face to face and asks a final question or makes a final statement. It's a very formal way of ending a retreat. And so Bob comes up in front of Sojin and says, tearful and shaken, this is what I expected, this is what happened. You know, he told him the thing. And he said, what is this? And Sojin said, nirvana. Just as it is. Cool breeze blows through the empty hall. I love that statement that I mentioned. The cool breeze blows through the empty hall.
Could you say it again a little?
The cool breeze blows through the empty hall. It's one of those enigmatic, kind of nice poetic statements as we begin to drop and open and live with renunciation of these attachments, and then the cool breeze can blow through the empty hall. Just two more small quotes. He says, the suffering we're going through is the basis of our enlightenment. We think that our enlightenment will be the end of our suffering. But enlightenment abides right in the midst of it. Our suffering will bring it out. Our suffering will bring it out. Our suffering brings out enlightenment. Not enlightenment quenches suffering. You have to get to the bottom of our suffering. We have to go down all the way to the bottom of it. Then enlightenment will spring forth. Yeah, I'm setting you up. Oh, yeah. See.
Everything
But-
I'm going to say is just going to be a footnote.
Yeah.
But this is that counterintuitive thing I've been talking about, that enlightenment is the basis of our practice and what calls us to practice, because it wants to be expressed and embodied. And so he's saying the suffering we go through is the basis for awakening. I'll change the word. And we think that our awakening will be the end of our suffering, because we have this idea that Buddhism, ends suffering. But awakening or enlightenment abides in the midst of suffering. First Noble Truth says life is characterized by dukkha, or usually suffering. And then there are some other things to do. But it doesn't say that First Noble Truth is no longer true after you practice. No, that's forever. That doesn't mean you're burdened or caught. That's what the rest of practice is for. And there's a lot of unnecessary suffering that we create that we have a lot of impact on. But the foundational aspect of dukkha comes with conditioned existence. This comes with the plan. That's what you get. So he says, we think our enlightenment or our awakening will be the end of our suffering, but enlightenment abides right in the midst of it. Our suffering will bring it out. We have to get to the bottom of our suffering. We have to get to the bottom of what dukkha really is in our conditioned existence and go down all the way to the bottom of it. Then awakening springs forth. So we don't have to figure this out, but it's a different way of understanding things. Finally, he said in another quote, these are several pages apart, but these are just highlights that I thought you might appreciate or be irritated about. He said, enlightenment is not the end of the road. It's within the effort. You remember that poetic quote in the beginning, Yunman, about what is it to reach enlightenment? And he says, to reach light. And then he says to his student, forget the light, I want the reaching.
Mm.
Enlightenment is not the end of the road, it's within the effort. The effort to practice is the awakening. That's not something that will get you to awakening. Awakening wants to express itself, and your effort is that expression. That's why Dogen called it practice enlightenment. To have this difficult time and stay with it and do your utmost, that's pure practice. To have this difficult time and stay with it and do your utmost, that's pure practice. It's a matter of thoroughness. Then there's another word like persistence and what was the other one? It starts with a C. Constancy, thank you. It's not that results don't make a difference. It's just that we're not attached to the results. Bless you. And so these stories are stories that offer us an opportunity to say, all this one, what does that look like? What did it look like for Nansen and Joshu? What did it look like for Choyo? What is it going to look like for Aijon? These people, Seijo. What does it look like when these non-ordinary ways of approaching life are lived through, lived out? So is it just that you're sleepy, or how's it going here? After lunch, are you okay?
I have a comment. I'm thinking about inquiry yesterday, and it looks like that.
Yeah.
Heartbreak. And in the midst of that,
Beauty. Yeah. Yeah, what you find in the midst of when everything breaks down, like I said, yes, it isn't chaos, it's beauty. And why Sojin would say, when Bob said, what is this? He said, Nirvana. It's that he was no longer able to hold everything together, and he was able to be fully with to the bottom of whatever he was, and that's freedom. What's extinguished is selfing. What's left is reality. We think of Nirvana as pleasure. What I just said, that confused you.
We do. I don't know if we do.
But I repeat it?
No, I mean, do we think nirvana is pleasure?
Most
I
people
don't.
do.
Cultural.
Yeah.
Most people do, sure. Nirvana.
Okay, yeah, it's used culturally.
Common, yes, it's
Yeah,
really use of it.
How do you think of
Different.
I
different-
think of it as irrelevant.
Well, it actually points to extinction of something. And what is extinguished
Yeah.
is the way that we cling to and continue to develop this self-centered dream. That continues the suffering as we chant each time. Holding to those views continues the cycle of suffering. But each moment, life as it is, that's what we're basically saying. Within all of that is, that's what we wake up to. You don't wake up out of it, you wake up to it. And that awakening within the midst of everything is the freedom. We don't get free from anything. We get free within everything. And according with that is the way of compassion. That's our chant. So, a little something. I'm very spoiled in many ways because I'm well taken care of and you're very caring to me. And I'm also privileged because I get to do something that I love so much. You know that feeling, it's like, really? And I'm also privileged by being really healthy. I'm 73. I haven't had a big challenge, So in the middle of the night when I started having bouts of atrial fibrillation and started feeling really strange, and thank goodness I had a nurse who texted me almost at 9 o'clock last night, and you've never texted me before. And she sends me a beautiful picture of the aurora, of the northern lights. It says, have you ever seen these? She knew I probably had never seen them. And I said, no, I haven't, but I'm already in bed and I'm in the city. And she was out in the country and sent me a beautiful picture. But it's so random that would happen. And then 10 minutes later, I can't go back to sleep because I feel so strange. And so I thought, well, I just heard from a nurse. So I take my pulse rate and then I do an EKG and it says, yeah, you're in atrial fibrillation. I text her back, send her the thing. So we spent some time together last evening, at least online. She encouraged me and then I've been well taken care of. But I'm continuing to go in and out of it today. And that's why I'm drinking these electrolyte things to help with that. I don't think it's a situation where I need to go to the hospital particularly. Although Chris might be shaking her finger at me. Maybe you should see a doctor. I did get coming here from lunch, I get my 14-day monitor information from my test. So the only reason I'm telling you all this is to just sort of avow that I'm unaccustomed to not feeling well. I'm feeling strange. Not that I feel terrible. I'm pretty animated and happy I'm here. But I don't feel myself 100%. And so I'll do my best for you in this. So I just, this is part of my seeing it through when it's tough. So I just let you know what it is. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I just want to be honest with you like you're being with me in all of this. It's unusual. I'm not used to this. And isn't it great that I have all this help? And I'm not having to do all the Dharma talks in the usual way. You do. Some part of me must have. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Did you
It's
see
pretty
a
good.
doctor?
I mean, my heart's feeling pretty good.
Did you see a doctor?
No.
Now we can all wonder, what can we do?
Yes, right. What do you do?
I've been going back and forth. We've been doing vitals and doing the things that I need to do, that I know to do, and it's not something. So if things change or seem we have options because we talked about it, so there's backup. But I think I'll be fine. I've had a couple of bouts of this before, and I resolved pretty well. This one has lasted a little bit longer. It hasn't been worse. It's just lasted a little bit.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah. And the problem with it lasting longer is you have more possibility of having a stroke. Not going to happen. I'm taking my blood thinner.
It's stunning that this, all this activity, you know, way up there, right? Brought you and you together last night. When you think about this is unrest, really, what's happening with the Northern Lights. I don't know. I used to actually know a little bit about the Northern Lights, and I no longer have access to that information, but it's really cool.
Solar flares, they hit the earth and all these things. You know?
Yeah, so a lot of charge, right? And creating this beauty. So a lot of electricity, creating beauty, and then you're having a charge and unrest.
I think mainly I was dehydrated. That I did not drink enough yesterday, and I'm jet lagged and have been on airplanes. And I just
So long. There's a hole in your bucket.
yeah, I didn't take good enough care of myself because there's sort of a weird physical arrogance in it, you know, like it's not going to happen to me. I just had a stress EKG thing, you know, in the hospital to make sure. And they said, "Oh boy, you outperformed for your age. You were fantastic," you know. Like, yeah, that's what I'm used to. Outperform. But that's a problem.
Did anyone see the Northern Lights in the cities last night?
I don't know if you could see them in the city. You were out in the country, right?
Yeah, I was staying with my folks out in Corcoran. They did get pretty intense for a few minutes where you might have
Yeah, they said you could see them in the cities, but
it was vague for quite a while, and then there was just a few minutes.
But the photo she took is stunning.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
And often the photos will show more than what the naked eye will
Yeah.
see. So those, I had a friend in the city and she took a picture and she had a good picture.
oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So all of this
Two more tonight, actually.
practice, karma, life, health, death, everything. You're on.
What an intro.
Please come closer.
And I'm gonna break my rule about not having.
Have to go in the room.
Yeah.
I think we'd all support you.
So I don't fall over.
I'll be Suzanne.
I feel like I may have jinxed you.
You're in the first balcony.
Yesterday, I was like, I need my water. Yeah. I'm gonna keep my water.
Well, it's a little different because we're not just doing sausage in and sausage together. Sorry. Take a lot of your time.
How does this feel to be closer?
No, we're good, Suzanne.
Now come nearer. Come closer. A little bit.
Yeah.
And what I would love is respect to the people who like to be on the outer edge boundary, okay? And still be where you want to be. But what I really invite is for everyone to be close enough that you can reach out, make contact. If you would like, stay connected. You can hold the touch if you're shoulder to shoulder if you want. You don't have to. But I want some.
And also you need to be close because you know how his voice goes.
Can we do a sound check on mine?
For you.
Hearing okay?
Okay. For a good bit of his career, he worked with adolescents.
You gotta do
Wake up.
Are you concerned, Marla?
I just want to talk to Ani.
You what?
I just want to talk to Ani.
Oh, I just talked to him.
I know.
He's okay.
Is he okay?
Yeah. I didn't talk to him last night. I wanted to wait and see what's going on. But I talked to him just a moment ago and he's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you know he'd be worried. My husband. And they've been friends since they were like in junior high. So.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Nothing to be sorry about.
Makes sense.
No.
Like his worst nightmare that I'd be away and something would happen.
I know.
I know. When we talked about that. I appreciate your care.
Thus ends my commentary on the koan.
Right.
Now that that's over.
It's the footnotes that take all the time.
Now that that's over with, now we can just play and relax and have fun. So I want to tell you what I think we're gonna do, what I think I'm gonna do. And then we'll see what actually happens. Because this is a really rich koan and kind of a unique koan, a lengthy koan with a lot going on, a lot of
Another story like we had this morning.
story.
Which one?
Hyakujo and the fox.
Don't look.
Okay.
I like the effort to dive right in. No, don't look. I want to share just a little bit of preface first. And part of that preface might even include a look at koans themselves, first of all. Because especially for this koan, it might be helpful for us to just feel our way into even what a koan is and what it's doing and how we relate to it. It'll be helpful for us to enter into this koan. And then I'll share some themes about it to sort of be watching for and attuned to. And then one of the reasons that I wanted us all to be close like this is because we have to imagine a great campfire happening right here between us, and that we're sitting around this campfire. This koan comes at a great time this time of year in October, because we're approaching, in our culture anyway, and a lot of cultures actually, the spooky time, Halloween. And this story includes some elements, in a sense, it's kind of a ghost story. And it includes some elements of, which I really love, like cultural folklore that's picked up and used as part of this story as Dharma. And it's, as a story, it's drama, okay? So even though it includes a lot of complexities and subtleties of sort of like Dharma terminology or concepts or principles, we might tease out a little bit. It's really to be met and entered into as the story itself, rather than just the philosophical concepts of it. So what I'd like to do first, before we look at the sheet, don't look. Before we get to this, I just want to tell it as a story. And we'll linger in it a little bit and savor it and see what it feels like as we do some of that ancient practice of storytelling around a fire. Okay? Sound okay?
Good.
After we do that, then these will come out and we'll do a little bit of a closer reading, especially some parts, and then have a little more commentary and explore it and turn it over. in our hands a little bit. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Do we get to have some more if we pay really close?
Talk to
Really
the
long
Tunzo,
stay.
talk to Chris. She's in charge of food.
If I have any in my bag, then.
The story actually has, in my living with it, it's kind of divided into two parts with a bridge in between. That's the way I'm going to think of it for our sake today. Two parts, with each having a lot going on, with a beautiful bridge that kind of is connecting them in between. And in the first part of this storytelling, I'm just going to narrate us through part one, maybe a little pause, and then into the bridge. And then we're going to leave part two on the side for a little bit. Okay. So in the way that my system works and my brain works, sometimes I have some like sensory crossover and a synesthesia sort of stuff. And there was some interesting things happening in living with this koan. And I thought maybe I would share some of that because it sets the mood, sets the tone a little bit. Okay, so before we even begin, this is like the trailer. Before we even begin,
Yeah.
think autumn and autumnal colors. And deep, deep, deep reds, like of the leaves turning. On the edges, some rusty brown. Yet still pops of green. Life's still in its process. And smell of couple smells happening, like burning firewood, campfire. And I love this word petrichor, that smell of the earth after fresh rain. And then some other sounds like the wet ground as you step.
You like that one?
Yeah, yeah. And then for some reason, another sound I hear like basso profundo, deep, like cello, or even like the upright double bass. Or like chanting really deep. Like in a way that kind of starts to make your skin tingle a little bit. You can feel the sound vibration. That's what's going on throughout most of this koan for me. Okay, so let's picture ourselves on the side of a mountain. And you're on a path, making your way up the mountain. And as you look up in the distance, you can see smoke rising from a fire. And you can hear gently falling rain. But through the sound of that gently falling rain, you also hear up at the top of the mountain, great is the robe of liberation, vast is the robe of liberation, the formless field of benefaction, wearing the universal teaching. I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing whole being, practicing up there and chanting. And so we want to go join them, and as we make our way up the path, we notice some tracks off the path into the bushes. Can't quite make out what that animal is. You hear a little rustling in the bushes. You're on high alert. Now imagine yourself in the monastery. That's where much of this takes place. And the teacher, the Japanese name is Hyakujo, Hyakujo or Hyakujo, Hyakujo. Chinese, it's Bai Chang or Pai Chang. Hyakujo is the teacher, and he's teaching, and he's noticed and recalled that whenever he's doing any kind of teaching and Dharma talk, in addition to all of the practitioners who are there in residence or who are coming just for the Dharma talk, and there's always one old man who's in the back and stays in the back. And Hyakujo, as he's teaching, always sees this old man. But it's said that the rest of the people who are gathered never notice him. He's unseen to everyone but the teacher who's teaching. And at the conclusion of every piece of his teaching, when everyone departs, the old man always just gets up and also departs, leaves, except for this day, today. Everyone leaves and the old man remains, stays. And so the teacher, Hyakujo, approaches him, meets him, and says, "Who are you? Who is this standing before me now?" Who are you? And the old man says, in truth, I'm not a human being. I'm not a man. I'm actually a wild fox. At one time, I was a man. At one time, I was a human being. At one time, long, long ago, once upon a time, in the time of Buddha before the Buddha, I lived on this very mountain where this monastery is. And I was the teacher. I was the Zen master. I was the abbot, just like you, Hyakujo, is presently. And he said, but once a student came to me and asked me, teacher, does one who is awake, does an enlightened person, or does a person of great practice who has had some kind of realization fall into cause and effect or not? Does a person who's had realization, does an awake person still fall into cause and effect? Are they still subject to causality? And the old man continued, he said, and I answered my student, no, an awakened person does not fall into cause and effect. No, someone who is awake is not subject to causality. He said, and for this answer, I was made to live 500 lives as a fox on this mountain, and I've remained here ever since. And Hyakujo, present teacher, listened. He was with him, meeting him. And the old man continued, the wild fox continued. He said, so I ask you now, please, teacher, say the turning word. Give me your Zen words that will free me, that will liberate me from the body of this fox. So I ask you, does one who is awake, does a great practitioner, still fall into cause and effect? great practitioner still subject to this law of causality? And Hyakujo looked at it and said, they do not ignore cause and effect. They're not deluded by cause and effect. They don't obscure cause and effect. They don't evade cause and effect. They don't ignore cause and effect. And then the old man, the wild fox, bowed to Hyakujo, full prostration. And he looked up beaming and he said, thank you. I've now been freed from the body of this fox. He had a realization, great awakening. I've now been freed from the body of this fox. But then he asked, this begins the bridge. And he asked, please, if I might make a request of you. He said, though I've been freed from the body of the wild fox, you'll find the corpse of the wild fox, the back of the mountain and the back of the cliff on this mountainside. And he said, my request is, will you please perform the normal ritual ceremony as a memorial and funeral as you would for a monk, for a practitioner, especially as for an abbot. Will you show me that honor, please? And Hyakujo, still meeting him and responding him, attuned to him, bowed. Nodded his head. And so then Hyakujo asked, he went to like the head student, and he went to like the chief monk and he said, I want you to sound the sounding board and make an announcement that after our midday meal, after lunch, we're going to perform a funeral. And so this was announced. And you can imagine, if I had done what I almost did, I considered it and I thought, no. But right as Chris sent us off to lunch today, if I had piped up and made an announcement that when we return after a meal, we were going to have a funeral here, nobody knows what's going on. And imagine, because these folks were just like us, ancestors are old, or just as we, okay? Imagine what an announcement like that would bring up in our thinking, what kind of thoughts would appear, what kind of talk would appear, what kind of speech would appear. And it appeared because then when that announcement went out, everyone first got together and they thought, oh, we better go check it's called the Nirvana Hall. It's like the sick bay, the sick room. For anybody who's having any kind of suffering or sickness or dying, they stay in this room and there's some sort of formal role for people to be in there to provide the care for them. They said, it's not recorded in the books here. We didn't even know anybody was there. We better go figure this out. Empty, no one was there. They started asking around, has anybody even been sick? No. So it caused a great stir, a great ripple throughout the monastery. You can imagine the thoughts. So maybe someone has the thought, well, I'm in charge of doing this ceremony and I have roles. It would have been nice if he had given us a little more advance notice. Right? Or maybe someone has the thought, wait, is it me? Am I sick? Am I gonna die? Or maybe someone has the thought, lunch? I wonder what's for lunch. Or maybe someone has the thought, maybe someone just responds like this. Is that same or different, better or worse? I don't know. Is it another kind of response? So they're talking. Nobody knows what's going on. And then the time comes and Hyakujo leads the assembly out of the monastery and up the mountain and around the mountain and down to the cliff. And there's an opening in the bottom of the cliff, cave. And Hyakujo leads the way. Everyone enters the deep, dark cave. This is the part of the movie where the audience says, "Don't go in there." Right? But Hyakujo is committed to this, and so they go in, and Hyakujo had a staff. And he walks into the cave with everyone following him. He finds the back of the cave. He starts poking his staff, and he digs out the body of this fox. And then it's said that they performed the memorial service, which would have been a cremation of the body. Thus it ends the bridge. Okay, we're gonna leave it right there. What I first wanted to share is actually not ever really considered any part of like the main point of this story, but it was one in my living with it this time, and I'm familiar with this koan and I've worked with it a lot. But for some reason, this time, what was most moving to me wasn't necessarily even the exchange about the teaching itself, but it was the conducting of this ceremony for the body of the fox. And who knows, maybe an abbreviated version, an adaptation of the normal ceremony that would have been due an abbot of the monastery. Maybe it was shortened. But traditionally, there would have been, is quite extensive. You know, you've been doing all the preparation for our Jukai ceremony that we're having tomorrow. Whew, you've been doing so much alive. It's even more complex than that. There are traditionally like 9 different like ritual actions that would have been undertaken. I want to just share those with you real quick. It's called kabutsuji. Okay, it would have involved putting the corpse in a coffin. And a lot of times they position the body in an upright position, like in zazen, but putting, in a very particular way, putting the corpse in the body, putting the corpse in the coffin, and then moving the coffin to the lecture hall. And in a special way that the coffin lid is closed. Even hanging a portrait, even either in the lecture hall above the coffin or out at the gate of the monastery, honoring the person. And a brief Dharma talk near the body. And then carrying the coffin to the cremation grounds, offering hot tea, offering a hot sweetened water, bathing in the body, and then finally starting the cremation fire with a torch. Very extensive, attentive, intimate care for this old body of a fox that they just dug out of the cave. So before we get to anything else, I want to say part of why I was so moved by that. And I think it has something to do with in our practice in Zen, it really is a practice and ethic of non-abandonment. Non-abandonment. And Zen, there's no trash. Even trash isn't just trash. Non-abandonment and meeting what perhaps has been abandoned or what has suffered with this kind of intimate care and taking the time to really, really fully meet it and recognize it and fully honor it. Also, we might take it as some instructions in our practice because I'm certainly not recommending that we in our practice, like in Zazen, for example, have to go poking around with a stick to find that stuff that maybe has been abandoned. We don't have to go poking around first as what we're looking for. Just notice in the story that that part, that box, that energy first came to Hyakujo. And Hyakujo was just open and receptive to it with this kind of open, attentive readiness to meet and to offer care. And so when that stuff appears, not that we're going out looking for it necessarily, but we're open to seeing it when it comes so we can receive it and then meet it with care and honor it and hold it and appreciate it and love it. Okay. So, what the heck's going on here? Have you had that question? What's going on here? So, okay, so this old dude appears and he was kind of a wild fox, but he's also a monk. He says he was a human, but no longer a human. He was made to live in the body of a fox because he gave some sort of wrong answer. Well, what did his response even mean? Why was it wrong? Are you kidding me? If he was wrong and he gave a wrong answer, he was like punished and made to live as a fox for 500 lives? What? No, he doesn't fall into cause and effect. He's not subject to the law of causality. But then the response was like to free and liberate him from the body of this fox does not ignore cause and effect. He does not obscure cause and effect. So what's going on? I'm gonna pause because I need to catch my breath and my voice in case any of those kind of questions of our immediate response want to be voiced or in case you have any you want to add in so far.
We're all in trance.
Well,
the one thing that I just popped in is like, did this teacher cause him to be transformed? Which is like the teacher said something and then voila, now he's different and now he's, not a fox anymore. And it's like, is that cause and effect right there? Or is it cause and effect that somehow he gave the wrong answer and now he's transformed to a fox? And it's like, it's that like,
Yeah, almost in a kind of magical way
Yeah.
in this story.
I feel like the compassion of the teacher was so important, to believe the man, believe the old man. We don't know if the old man was telling the truth and the reality of what the teacher might have experienced the truth as. But he felt the man's earnest heart and longing to be met. And that's what touched me, both in saying the answer that he said about cause and effect, but then particularly in saying, yes, I will honor you, the fox, the man, in the way that you have earnestly at least thought that you lived your life as an abbot and these 500 years or however many lives you suffered. There's just that compassion of depth and honor and meeting someone right where they were without having to discern now. Let's just fact check, you know. For again, it wasn't just the man's words as they came, but it was the whole being of the old man. That's I don't know, that's how I thought about it. And again, getting back to meeting people exactly where they are, close with that tending. And I'll just say one more thing. There's in one of our chants, we talk about save the body, for the body holds all of our ancestors. And just the sacredness of the form, the boundless form. Our bodies are constantly changing. They're really boundless, but they're also a form. So it's that reverence, just the aliveness that's there, but also the suffering we each live in while we're alive, however long we are. That's right.
You, Chris.
The other thing that popped into my mind too was the, transforming into a fox, a fly fox, but, and how in our life we have this shame, like I gave the wrong answer, and the shutdown, and the hide, and the feeling transformed into something that you don't want to, be seen, heard, and the constant hiding that happens when you have a lot of that shame-based stuff for doing something wrong. And that popped up in that story for me.
Yeah, Ava.
I haven't heard in this story before the curiosity of the abbot. The way you told the story. He knows this guy, he's known this guy for quite a long time, and finally he gets to ask him, who are you? But he's like, he's already got a relationship with this guy. That kind of reaching.
And there's a little magical edge to it too. It's like nobody else can see him.
Right.
What's that about?
Yeah.
Easy.
Your comment. I think that was your hand I saw, Becky. Okay, so we got you. This goes back to from this morning, your comments on looking at this, putting yourself into the point of view from everyone. Yeah. So one, also appreciate the willingness of the assembly, because remember, they, even in the whole memorial service and conducting the funeral, especially if they did what I like to think of it as, like all of the intricate, meticulous care of a ceremony like that, to them, like we just went into a cave and dug out the corpse of an old fox, but we're conducting this high ceremony sort of appreciation. They didn't know, like talk about don't know mind and the willingness, even with all of the thoughts that might have appeared. It's interesting to sink into that perspective too. This magical element of no one can see him. This had also never occurred to me, but the old man, the wild fox, having been the former abbot of that monastery on that mountain, his name would also have been Hyakujo, because the names of the abbots and the Zen masters in their dwelling place and practice place, they took on the name of the mountain. And so a sense, it's old teacher Hyakujo meeting current teacher Hyakujo. I made a mistake as a teacher, having this encounter and dialogue and coming together and meeting the current teacher, no one else can see old man, former abbot.
That part of me that's been exiled. That's not some other person.
Mhm.
I never thought of that either. That's just a part of me that's exiled. Of course, nobody else can see him. It's not an ex.
So one of the themes here, in a sense, is it's really struck by the way of looking at this. Certainly not the only, is there's a theme here of like the felt great responsibility of a teacher. The sort of responsibility of what it's like, and all of us now in this retreat have maybe felt this a little bit, but the feeling of having to care for something and hold something and respond to something, and there's some responsibility of that to meet it when questions come. And you don't want to send anyone astray. But do I have it in me to actually meet people and answer in what they need? Not,
amen, brother.
Not from just what I think, but is it really gonna land? And the old man, who's now a wild fox, was asked about cause and effect and karma. And like when we have this great freedom or liberation, are we still, does shit still happen or not?
Still subject to karma?
Are we still subject to karma? And here's the crazy deal. In a way, lots of commentaries and differing opinions on this, but in a way, that answer, not subject to cause and effect, being free of karma, technically, kind of Buddhism 101, technically correct. No longer stuck in the wheel of creation of suffering. No longer stuck in samsara, is what that's called. But still, even by giving the academic, technically correct answer to the student who came to him, he still was made to live in the body of a fox these 500 lives. Why in the world would that be? Could be, on the one hand, because it was only nothing but a mere intellectual answer. Someone maybe having been caught in the midst of great suffering, maybe having just endured some kind of like really hard to endure effect, something that they're tender to, and come to the teacher and ask about it. And imagine a teacher, although it wouldn't come out in this way, it's sort of like, well, according to, that's no longer actually subject to that kind of suffering.
So like you ask AI, it gives you the data.
Yeah.
But there's nobody there.
So CJ?
Yeah.
What if the mistake was answering the question?
Maybe it was even answering. Maybe, sometimes. Maybe even it's the wrong question.
Maybe answering it, or the teacher could have asked a question back. A lot of times.
Chris, 1 second.
Hold on, we're gonna hear you. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
You know, for some reason, throughout the whole rendition of this story, a Tibetan quote keeps coming to my mind, and I don't remember the teacher, but it's something like, even if your vision is as vast as the sky, your conduct should be as fine as barley flour.
Mm.
And I think that's what's speaking to the story.
That's beautiful.
Will you say that one again, Chris?
Could you say it again?
Even though, I don't think the word is vision, but even though your vision is as vast as the sky, your conduct should be as fine as barley flour.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you for that, Chris.
Yeah.
And I want to pick up on that, especially this mention of conduct here, okay? Oh, yes, I haven't forgot about you yet, thank you. On the one hand, it could be the conduct of how teacher answered that question. Maybe though giving a technically correct answer, that in his conduct, in his comportment, in his body, it wasn't, that answer wasn't embodied in the teacher. It was just here, or maybe it was just in the Dharma book that he was parroting back. So maybe
Was his face shattered? Was he feeling no longer justify himself?
Yeah. In other words, sometimes that technically correct answer could be a way of justifying myself in my position. And not what it's about. So maybe he needed to learn another kind of lesson, as a teacher. On the other hand, about conduct, the importance of conduct and how we care and relate to one another and meet one another. When the student comes to the teacher and asks a question like that, this technically correct answer of like being free in that way, maybe it wasn't what the student needed to hear at the time. Maybe that's not really maybe it's a matter of timing. That was not an answer that was going to actually meet and help that student. In fact, it could have led astray. Maybe it was really important in that time, as it is for all of us, that I pay really close attention to how I'm conducting myself and the kind of impact that it has on the world, on people around me, on myself. And it can be a kind of, spiritual bypassing to just get caught up in this, like, I just want the bliss. I just want complete openness and freedom. And so like, hey man, live and let live. Everything's okay. Cause and effect, I'm beyond that.
It's the no and dark on that side.
No and dark
light on that side.
Even though technically correct, it would not be complete. Yeah, Becky.
Yeah, so I have all kinds of questions about this.
Me too.
I feel like maybe we'll talk more later. But one of the things, Chris, that quote spoke exactly to my question, and something unsettling, I think, throughout Buddhism, but in Zen and in Koan, of this like hair's breadth away from being turned into a fox for 500 lifetimes. Like that, it can speak to the gravity of what that answer was, and also the subtlety of how quickly we can get lost. And that it doesn't take that much. And so I'm wondering,
A hair's breadth deviation and heaven and earth are set apart.
yeah, yes. And that, it's unnerving to me. It's really unnerving. It can be paralyzing if you overthink it. And so it's like, I'm wondering.
If you overthink it.
For the part, when I overthink
the right way.
Yeah.
Teachers are human too.
Well, and that gets into the idea that I don't know what ancient Chinese or Japanese people who wrote koans thought about animals, but we're very human-centric. And from my perspective, a fox is an embodied creature who's very wise and knows how to live sustainably in a way that most humans really do not get, at least not today. But I'm like, I'd rather be a fox sometimes than a human, and I don't know if it's necessarily a downgrade to go to a fox, and an upgrade to go to something that's
Was
more
this a
embodied.
punishment?
Exactly.
Not a punishment.
In China at the time, they were not they were nasty, evil embodiment of
The fox.
bad things.
It's like a
They were
rat.
wild
Yeah,
rat.
yeah.
Oh.
Right, it was.
So that's where the context is coming.
And yet, hold on to that. Remember part one, bridge part two? This part, in this part, we're to like take it at the face value of is like a black cat in that culture and in that mythology, and they're trickstery and deceiving and wily. Stay away from them.
Okay, there's a reverence for all life. So, is it not?
Yes. And yet there was this meeting of it with reverence, even that.
I would posit that it wasn't technically correct, that the fundamental assumption that enlightened people are not subject to the laws of causation is incorrect. That's another way to look at it, because there's plenty of Tibetan lineages that argue that even when you become illuminated, which hypothetically is not a permanent state. I mean, nothing is permanent, right? So let's imagine for the shit of it that you are enlightened for 500 years, okay? But you're still in the energetic field. There's no distinction between the relative and the absolute. That's just something we perceive to be distinct. So just because if you're enlightened, you're still subject, ultimately, eventually, in 1,000 million kalpas to the laws of causation. So I think the assumption that is technically correct is fundamentally challengeable. It's pretty challengeable.
Both ways.
Right? Like, it's not even a problem. And in terms of it being impunitive, 100,000 million kalpas, 500 years is like nothing. So it's basically just go home and think for a second. Have some thoughts and then come back. So I can understand why it would feel terrifying, because it's like, holy shit, I'm gonna be turned into a wily, rodent for getting it wrong, and you're just guessing. But if you think about it in terms of space-time, it's really not that big of a deal. He just was like, try again.
Probably true.
Right, absolutely, 100%. So that's my moment of thought. Yeah.
Yes, and that too, and certainly another perspective, and yet it also sort of points at, well, what does it mean to what does it mean to fall into cause and effect, or not fall into? What does that not fall into? What does it mean being subject to it? What does it mean not being subject to it? Might not be what we think it means. Might not mean what we think it means. By the way, wild fox and the appearance of this wild fox. Hyakujo Zen, wild fox Zen. In a retreat like this of study and zazen, study and practice, there are two sides, and both of these are actually important and equally necessary. Some learning and some study and teaching, and so our intellect is involved. So it's not that we want to say thinking is bad or having an intellect is a bad thing. We need that sort of study of the Dharma, like we're doing on this retreat. And then equally necessary are experience. Doriki, the power of the way, embodied and experiential. Both of these are actually necessary, and they're both ditches that we can fall into. And so the style where we get overly attached to and overly into and fall into nothing but just thinking, and so sort of stuck in the thinking, even about things spiritual or even about Zen, is known as wild fox Zen.
Really?
Wild fox Zen. On the other hand, getting stuck only in nothing but the experiential, and having the aversion to, and like, I don't need to think about anything or study anything or learn anything or be open to needing to learn anything. Just the experience, man, or just feelings, and getting caught in that, stuck in that, attached in that. Known as being a Zen devil. Whoa, kind of feel us, simply pointing at, it's not like just name calling, but it's just simply pointing at, hey, be responsible. These are both equally necessary, and we all have tendencies one way or the other. We need each other to practice together and learn from one another, all of it together. Not just this, not just
And thus ends the commentary on my koan.
Now another footnote, footnotes tomorrow.
Right.
But what about now? We can look, okay?
Yeah, we can look.
But what about Hyakujo's response that ends up freeing this energy, freeing this person from the wild fox body? In our sheet here, this translation in the very middle of the page says that Hyakujo said, the enlightened person or the awakened person is not blind to the law of causation. And at the words of Hyakujo, the old man was awakened. So, not subject to the law of causation or not blind to the law of causation. We make of this not blind to the law of causation.
It sounds like a little bit what Sun was saying. It's like you can't, if you're existing, you're in it. I mean, this is the world of causation, so you're no separating from it. So you don't want to be blind to it. This is where you're navigating. And there's no special get out of jail free thing for enlightenment. Like, yeah, you don't have to deal with it.
Does that mean that if you don't believe in karma, you're not subject to it? I mean,
No.
just because you just, yeah. But the undertone to that question then is karma retribution and punishment for the
Karma is just
cause?
cause and effect.
Yeah, it
Only
is.
the answer on it.
Basically science.
That's the whole thing about punishment. It's a distortion.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing, yeah. But the word blind to me indicates sort of a lack of accountability. Like you could be blind to something and still not adhere to whatever it is you're blind to. I mean, you know what I mean? Subject to sounds more like laws and blindness sounds like oblivion. Yeah.
Especially when another aspect of the original word and original language is drawn out, not just blind to, but it's like an active blindness.
Denial.
Denial, ignoring.
Yes, yes.
Chinese, because we actually don't know. The words they use.
Yeah.
Subtle meaning.
So it's kind of pointless to worry about.
Yeah, but it's useful.
Very useful, yeah.
Just don't get stuck on any idea you have.
Or else I would be I would be wild fox Zen. And I wouldn't.
Well, is not blind being aware, being awake to it. You know, so if you're not blind to it, you're aware.
You're subject
to the concept.
Persist with affectionate awareness.
Exactly.
Well, could blindness be like our aversion to it and subject to it is our grasping? Like if it's something in between. I won't have that and it's not like I'm just having this like.
So, part two. Sake of time, maybe we.
Okay.
So now, that evening, after this encounter, after the funeral, that evening it was time for another talk, and it was only then that the teacher, Hyakujo, wants to share with everyone the story. And so he shared what happened, what he experienced with everyone as part of his Dharma talk. And then one of his senior students, Obaku, in the Japanese, or Hangpo in the Chinese, you'll see both of those times, says, Baku, upon hearing this story, asked Hyakujo. By the way, Baku went on to become another really great Zen teacher. And he was kind of fierce and powerful, and some of the records that we have said he was like sort of like a big athlete, like imposing figure. Somewhere something like even marvelous physique, but like confident the way he carried himself and just went right to the heart of things. But he also on his head had what's called like a protuberance, a large right on his head. And in the lore and the legend anyway, it said that that came about because he did, as part of his own practice, did so many prostrations.
Right. Okay.
In order to teach himself humility. In order to teach himself humility. But he had some understanding. And so he asked his teacher, okay, all right, teach. I understand that a long time ago, because a certain person gave a wrong Zen answer, he became a fox for 500 lives, you say? Is that what you're saying? This is where that deep bass comes, like almost like the Jaws theme. Duh. Because now the student's kind of coming for the teacher to challenge the teacher. So I want to ask you, teacher, if any one of us, if some modern master, if some modern teacher is asked many questions and he always gives the right answer, if she always gives the right answer, well, what will become of them? So you never make a mistake. You'll always get it right. Then what happens? And teacher, Hyakujo, says to his student, come closer. Come near, come near. Come closer and I'll tell you. The student, Baku, went up near his teacher, Hyakujo, slapped his teacher right in the face. Get him. I wanted to act that part out too. And so, but then it gets even wilder because the teacher, Hyakujo, claps his hands and laughs. And the teacher says, oh, here we go. Now we get befuddled again. I thought the old barbarian had a red beard, he said, and now I know a barbarian right here who has a red beard. Thus ends the koan. Oh, what's going on?
Who's the barbarian with a red beard?
Who's the barbarian with a red beard? Okay. Oh, it's Zach.
Historically.
So this will be helpful for us because this is, we don't have access to this unless someone.
They would know who he's talking about.
This would be like an everyday saying for these folks. It's not for us.
Right.
So old barbarian with a red beard, Dharma, the founding, did you know? Yeah. The founder of Zen, the Zen ancestor number one that brought Zen from India to China, Bodhidharma. And he was a foreigner. Foreigners were known as, they were thought of as barbarians. It was thought that all foreigners were barbaric, and so all foreigners had red beards. So he's saying, the old barbarian had a red beard, and now I know a barbarian right here who has a red beard. I thought, I know our original founding teacher who had great awakening and realization and freedom that our practice is founded on. That old dude, now I see it right in front of me, student.
It's right here.
And it just hit me in the face. It just connected. just contacted me, like,
You know, I just wanted to share a thought about this whole story that went through my head, and it's probably totally out in left field. My thoughts tend to be that. But I was thinking of Western mythology and how there are these myths about somebody who committed a great act of hubris, going against the gods, and then was given some sort of eternal punishment, and then was redeemed by love. And somehow that fit this story, that it was kind of presumptuous for the teacher, Hyakujo, to make this kind of categorical statement, a very dualistic sort of statement. I'm sorry, not him, the old man, to make this dualistic kind of statement. And the punishment was harsh, but then the abbot treats him with deep respect and love and trust by going through this whole ritual. And it's like that redeems him.
Restoration of something.
Self-acceptance and forgiveness is a powerful thing. This is a projected part of him. And it's interesting that our Dharma had a red beard, but a fox.
That's right. Yeah.
Red. Not always, but.
I'm also wondering if the error, so to speak, isn't in the answer itself, either the one that the old man, Hyakujo, the fox man, gave, or this answer Hyakujo is responding to both, like, but the certainty in the answer is the hook, and these students continue to teach and point that out in their teacher, like, you just tried to answer with certainty, teacher. Shame on you, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or like, wake up again, that we have these moments of awakening and then fall back asleep or get attached. And I'm struck as well by
They're all heading towards
the timing of, I think I'm kind of fascinated with this idea of it, like this being various parts of self, and, that Hyakujo, after many years of practice, seeing this old man come and show up and welcoming, but acknowledging, allowing space, that what was it about that day that this old man who was a fox came and or stayed, right? And that Hyakujo then said, welcome, like, who are you? And this very vulnerable person being revealed themselves. And so it's like, is there also something about the continuation of practice that invites waking up also to parts of ourself, wisdom within ourself, recognizing teachings from all the, Buddha nature that is. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
Yes.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's so lovely.
Yeah.
Well, and the other part that I just am so touched by is the tender care that he went and dug out that part of himself and laid it to rest. In such a tender, respectful, dignified manner. If it is a sense of himself that he was hiding or got sent away, that he dug it out anyway and he just honored it.
Part of this practice here, not getting caught up in distinctions between this or that, or what's deserving of that kind of upward care or not, or what even the custom was like, well, that's only for these.
It seems like it brings us back to the sacred and the profane in a way too.
Any of the dualities, which this last part we're going to have to go to over time, is going to point to.
Chris, will you read Mumon's commentary on the top of page, back to the page?
Not subject to causality. How can this answer cause 500 rebirths as a fox? Not blind to causality. How can this emancipate a fox? To understand clearly, you have to have just one eye. Then you will appreciate how Hyakujo lived 500 fox lives as 500 lives of grace.
500 lives of grace.
He's asking every question that you guys have just asked.
Yeah.
Why did you get that? How did you get out of it? What's this one eye thing?
And what was our response when we heard that word grace and it was framed in that way?
It was like being freed from a fox body.
Is a fox upset about being a fox?
No.
It's like being freed in a fox body.
It's grace to be in a fox body.
That would not be, you have just one eye. You're accepting where you are. Go ahead, Ruth.
I was thinking that the koan has bookends, which with an answer that's wrong, and then answers that are always right. And both of them are not right. So you have extremes.
Let's show somebody else. Read the verse. What you were saying.
Not subject, not blind, one die, two faces, not blind, not subject, error piled upon error.
Error piled upon error.
If you make it this and just this, error. But if you say, no, not that, it's this.
Exactly.
Another error.
Or you're always right.
Or always wrong.
The two make right and wrong.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, the duality is.
And that's why Dharma comes in, right? Set them straight.
Like, this reminds me of the curtains that your mom made with the fabric in Singapore. And that then when they were done living in Singapore, she gathered up that fabric and brought it back. And you were conceived in Singapore, by the way. And now Liz has.
Not on those curtains.
That she,
Thank you, they were.
She wins today.
On that fabric from the curtains in Singapore, one of the first things that Liz sewed when she was learning to sew was a little bag. It was a lunch bag for you, I think,
It is
right?
now, yeah.
And it still is. And she just showed it to me at this retreat. So curtains, lunch bag, the same fabric of the same nature, whether it's in the form of curtains in Singapore or a lunch bag in Portland, Oregon, same fabric. So abbot of a monastery, great practitioner, Zen, great teacher. The student who's asked the question about cause and effect, who's asking that. A teacher that gives maybe not so good answer for the student of what the student needed. The fox. But all Buddha nature. All Buddha nature.
My blanket is also made from old saris, Indian saris. That's a blanket.
And there's still an importance. So it's not that the one eye and no duality, it's not that non-duality is an erasure of duality.
The dualistic concept.
Yeah,
Right.
It's not non-dual. It's not separate from duality. It's like it contains the duality. So all of these can still be important, beautiful, wonderful distinctions that we make. But if we get caught stuck in only that,
It's the rest.
complete. But whatever appears, even if it's great suffering, even if it's frustrations, even if it's being humiliated, or even if it's great loss, and not getting something that we really want, is that even if it's a situation where everything we try just isn't working, being with that, being it, being one with it, meeting it completely, because even that is of the nature of awake Buddha. Even our delusions. So to end, even this might point to a little bone I have to pick, even in of our chants. Our vow that says, delusions are numberless. I vow to end them all, or we vow to end them all. Or this vow ends them all. Not suggesting we change the chant, but maybe understanding it in a different way. Not meaning we're vowing to like that we have to get rid of our delusions, because our delusions and our suffering and our mistakes are the raw materials of awakening.
Thing I said at the start of the afternoon.
Yep. Yeah. It's like you knew.
We can end being stuck in them. We can end being stuck in them. And being stuck in them and even seeing them as problematic, and it's transformed into then like this is the ground, fundamental ground of our.
And that's how the vow frees. Yeah. That's how the vow is freeing, not because it ends.
Chris, I have a question regarding the word vow, right? And because I never really looked at it that way. When I read the word vow, I was reading endeavor. And so maybe it's no mistake, but so when I read the word endeavor, I mean that term endeavor, the concept of endeavoring means that it's always there for me. Kind of like, right? But what really is a vow?
That's another retreat.
Okay. That's what it is. Yeah, right. Sign me up.
That's a big question.
I think we'll be answering some of it tomorrow.
Yeah. Because you'll be watch what they do, and the ceremony is all about vow.
Okay.
And so hold that question.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you can chew on what's the difference between a vow and a goal.
Okay. I'll start small.
Well, not so fast.
Yeah. Not so small.
So it's 3:15 now. Do we want to do a little chanty chant?
Thank you, CJ.
We have to
Yeah,
finish.
thank you, CJ.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
And that's what now, 3:15? So come back 3:30.
Can we, could we do a little, could we do the
After dawn. Oh, yeah, we have to do that.
Oh, okay.
And then I say come back at 3:35.
3:35, sounds good. Thank you, CJ.
Yeah, thank you.
Page 5. I'll start us off and then may our intention equally permeate every being in place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, we vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, we vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, we vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, we vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, this vow frees them all. Delusions are inexhaustible, this vow ends them all. Dharma gates are boundless, this vow enters them all.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, this vow embodies it.